This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Step up your sweat with the Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus. Swivel your screen 360 degrees and follow your favorite instructors on and off your tread. Track your form and reps with the movement tracking camera. Feel supported as you train on the cushioned slap belt and move to the beat with Sound by Sonos. Elevate your workouts with the Cross Training Tread Plus.
Lululemon knows the 2 times you'll love your everyday pants the most are when they're brand new and when they're broken in. Lululemon's new Easy 5 pants are designed to let you enjoy both feelings at the very same time. Because Easy 5 is the brand new pant that delivers a broken-in feel from day one. Engineered with the structure you want and the touch of stretch you need. Easy 5 casually outperforms denim. Shop now, in-store or online. Athletic innovation for everyday life. Lululemon.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40, created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster Sam Baker. I first met today's guest, Canadian singer-songwriter Martha Wainwright, when I interviewed her in Glasgow a few weeks ago. We got talking about the nuts and bolts of midlife in the green room, and I was thrilled when she agreed to continue the conversation on The Shift. One of our foremost singer-songwriters, Martha has released 7 critically acclaimed albums, the latest of which, Love Will Be Reborn, is on repeat on my personal playlist. She's also, let's just get this out of the way now, the daughter of folk royalty, inverted commas, Kate McGarrigle and Loudon Wainwright III, and sister of singer Rufus Wainwright. In short, she comes from a family of very, very distinct voices, which made finding her own a particular challenge. Martha joined me from her home in Montreal to discuss her extraordinarily frank, the aptly titled Stories I Might Regret Telling You.
In terms of having bad taste in men, I think that there was something about me and this insecurity that I had about my looks and the way that I was that made it that the men that I was with were people that themselves had some confusion. I did have good taste in men, and then I liked some really great men. They just didn't like me back.
This conversation goes to all the places. The struggle to make motherhood and the music industry mix, surviving her grim divorce, finding new love with a good man, leaning into your looks, and the agony of being unable to conceive in her 40s. Martha is as candid in her conversation as in her songwriting. Oh, and she gave us a guided tour of her enormous vagina painting. Oh, how was the rest of your tour?
It was good. We got on the tour bus and traveled around. All the shows were sold out and in these very beautiful halls, so it was very, very nice, very cushy for me. I'm not used to only doing 4 songs. It's hard to get your mojo going in those shows, because you kind of you sing one song and then you stop for a while. But I think it was well received. It's hard to tell. It's not really my world, the traditional music. I like it, but I don't play it. So I'm a little bit of an outsider in that place.
How long have you been back?
I've been back 4 days.
So jet lag gone.
Jet lag's gone. Anxiety's gone. I was a little nervous on the road too because I missed the kids. And when it's not my shows, as I was saying, you sort of feel like, what am I doing here? I should be at home doing this, that, or I should be doing this, or should be doing something else. But once I got home and saw the kids, I felt better. I shouldn't overreact. I always get nervous that they're living their lives without me, which I guess is what they should be doing.
Yeah. How old are they now?
9 and 13.
Oh, God. Do you think men ever feel like that?
Well, it was interesting being on the road with mostly men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, mostly in their 50s and 60s. And these are men who travel essentially for a living. One of the main guys, it was this very well-known fiddle player called Ali Bain. And he said, we're paid to travel. We're not paid to play music. We're paid to travel because it's the travel that's the hardest part, sort of being buzzed around and going through airports and, checking into hotels at 2 a.m, getting up early and flying somewhere else. And that's really where the drudgery of it is, let's say.
Yeah, that's so true.
And the guys are these seasoned professional musicians who all have kids, or for the most part have kids, and have spent a lot of their lives away from their kids. There is a sadness that is there. That's obvious, because I would talk about my kids and, you could see some sadness or some thoughts or different, comments of it'll get better when they get older or whatever it is. But there was a general sense of also acceptance and doing the job that needed to be done, and that there were these mothers or girlfriends at home taking care of the home life, and then there was only one other woman on the road, and the other 2 other girls didn't have children, or 3 other women didn't have children. And you can see how in my profession, in the music industry, why, when women start to have kids, they either quit the profession for a while or really slow down a lot. And it seems to be harder, to do both in any real way. And so a choice is made that I haven't seen fathers make. I'm sure there are some musician fathers who have made the decision not to continue in music, but, obviously I haven't met them because they're at home, they're not on the road.
Yeah. I saw a cartoon. It was a New Yorker cartoon, and it was kind of a guy and a woman, and they both had a picture of their kids on their desk. There's somebody leaning over the guy's shoulder going, "Oh, are these your kids? How cute." And then there's that same person leaning over the woman's shoulder going, "Oh, are these your kids? Who's looking after them?"
Well,
and it's just like,
yeah, no, it's definitely a social pressure too. I found myself this last tour, really feeling racked with guilt and anxiety and sort of life decision making. Like, what have I done? What am I doing? How could I allow this to happen? These 2 children are alone. Of course, they're not alone. They're with their dad and they're getting on with their lives. It was like I definitely fell into this depression of anxiety of, fundamental life choices that I had somehow made a mistake. And then, of course, when I got home back to Canada and saw them and they put their arms around me and we had a few hours or 24 hours to sort of reacclimatize, they were absolutely fine, and I hadn't jeopardized my relationship with them. So it was a pressure that I had put on myself, too much. And it was over the top, definitely. And who's taking care of them? In my situation, it's a personal situation. It's difficult. I wish I had a better relationship with their father, because I think it would be easier to travel even as divorced people, because I could contact them more easily, or there would just be a little bit more of a friendly back and forth. But that's not the way it is. So I have to go and make money and come home and put really literally the food on the table. And I guess I'm proud of that more than anything. Once I get back and the children are okay, because of course their dad is doing a perfectly okay job, fine job, and they're going to be okay when I'm gone. And the schoolwork is half done, but we can fix that. And then the food gets on the table, and I give them the gifts that I bought them. And then I guess I'm really, more than anything, very proud of myself and really happy to have had the opportunity to have the job that I do and come home and then go back out again,
Yeah, it shouldn't be so hard, should it, in 2023 to be a mother and have I know your career isn't an ordinary career. It's not 9 to 5 or anything, but it shouldn't be so tough.
No, it shouldn't be. And there shouldn't be as much sort of questioning, constant sort of obsessive questioning of, have I made the right choice? Did I abandon my career? Did I abandon my children? Did I do, how do I get back into it? Like there's a lot of time spent, thinking about things that are sort of impossible to answer. On this last tour, I was walking a lot because I had a lot of free time. And I've always walked a lot, when I was younger, and I would be walking through Glasgow, Kelvin Park or somewhere. I was thinking about songwriting. I was thinking about men. I was thinking about the great fun night that I had the night before. I was going to the galleries. I was meeting people in the pubs. I was like living my life in the present. And now it would seem that when I do have free time and I'm on the road and I'm walking, I'm fretting about the decisions that I've made, and if they were the right decisions, and looking at myself going, is this good enough? Is this what you should be doing? What can you be doing better? What is it? And it does relate to work and home life and the balance of that, and it seems, I missed just walking through the botanical gardens and looking at the flowers rather than saying, okay, well, I have 10 minutes and then I'll go back and maybe have an opportunity to have a quick FaceTime or something. I don't know. It just seems like it's taken over the thought process.
Is that motherhood or is that age that's done that?
I guess both. Motherhood has made it that you think less about yourself and more about other people. That's what's filling up your mind is, there's a test coming up. I wonder if he's ready, or, the week they have the soccer thing. It takes up a lot of space in your mind. And when you're looking at stores, you're looking for not jackets for yourself, but, trainers for the kids or whatever. So there's an aspect of the motherhood aspect of that. But I guess also age also fills up your head with different responsibilities of, can I afford to take out another mortgage? And if I do this trip, will that cost me to, whatever those concerns are. I luckily have the opportunity to, sort of scratch out a lot of those feelings when I do get to get up in front of an audience with the guitar and be seen in a way that is, I wouldn't call it glamorous in my situation, but something that is a little bit magical and theatrical and performance driven, that does sort of free up those more mundane thoughts about others and does make it more ego driven, which of course is completely essential for me to have confidence to keep doing it.
Yeah. Is it that you're more able to live in the moment when you're on the stage and performing, because you have to put yourself out there and you have to put everything else to one side?
There's absolutely that. You have to put it yourself, everything else to one side. You have to make the best of the situation, because oftentimes, you might be grappling with a lot of conflicting and difficult emotions. Oh, the hall is not full, or oh, my voice is not that great today, or oh, I just came from having a bad, conversation with some lawyers. I need to, and you have to sort of push back and away from a lot of things that would make you not want to get up on stage and be strong and seem like you're in control and that you're steering the ship. And it's a way to escape a lot of those negative, fearful feelings and try and find the stronger feeling that and project that, which of course is what the audience wants to see from you. They don't want to see you falling apart and sort of stumbling through your own emotional problems. They've paid a ticket price to be guided and to feel like they're in good hands, so you have to sort of take responsibility for them and their well-being in a way. And I think the other thing that I personally, in my situation, and I would imagine this is for other singers as well, is that you're also trying to connect with the lyrics and the music, of songs that maybe you've sung thousands of times, and how do you make that an honest and a true connection and not just sort of phoning it in. Of course, sometimes there's shows where you're phoning it in more, which is okay, because if you have an artistry and an ability, then that's enough, because the music and the work can speak for itself. The words can speak for themselves. But obviously it is also great when you can really connect with the words and with the music and physically and emotionally. And sometimes these are words that you wrote, 20, 30 years ago and about, a time that was really different. But can you find a new meaning in the words, in the poems, or does a line take on a new meaning and then the song can can sort of evolve. And that's what I have found to be the most rewarding experience, because oftentimes I'm playing by myself solo some of the same songs that I've done for years, and how to keep doing it in a way where I feel connected. And that's where the best songs that I've written have not let me down.
When you're standing up there on your own, is it exposing?
Absolutely. Fully, physically, I feel like, there's eyes on my face and my body. In a way, I would feel less comfortable in another kind of situation. So sometimes I'll let myself be on stage in things that are very exposed, because I feel that that's the place to do that, whereas if I walked into a dinner party or into an office meeting, I don't have that many of those, but I have them sometimes, with something where
lucky.
You can see my nipples or whatever, that would make me feel uncomfortable. Whereas if I'm on stage and I'm wearing something where you can see my nipples, as long as I do it knowingly and I'm aware of it and I'm happy to do it, then it's a place where that makes sense. You know what I mean? Where it's okay, a certain kind of nudity and exposure. When I say nudity, like, to me, that's a good place to do that if you're in charge of it and if you feel that that's what you want to do at that time. And there's a distance, which I really appreciate, and on stage, it's not as scrutinizing as, say, a photograph, and I think for women in particular, as they get, older, photographs are difficult to deal with, everyone's clicking them on their phone and you're looking and you go, shit, Whereas on the stage, there's some makeup, but there's also lights, and there's literally feet and feet away from the closest person. And I think that's comforting. And it also allows you to be more gestural, and this is something that people have done in the art of theater forever. You put a lot of makeup on, almost like a mask, almost like in an extreme way, so that, the person in the back row can see you, or the smallest expression that you make can express the feeling. And that, I think, is a great way to be. It's a great way to be able to really express stronger, more extreme ideas, which is good for me because that matches with some of the lyrics. And on the stage, I get very physical, I'm gestural and things like that. And that's been something that I appreciate, because it matches the level of feeling that I sometimes have that you can't maybe express when you're walking down the street, when you want to scream, or when you're crying when you're walking down the street and you don't want anybody to see you how much you want to cry. So you have to sort of duck into, a doorway to let it out,
I mean, I was wondering, how old were you, do you think, when you found your voice? Not just because you come from a family with such loud, distinct voices, but also because so many of the women I speak to say it took them, kind of almost into their 40s or older in many cases to find their voice.
Well, I think the voice evolves into itself. You're trying on different things and wrestling with it until you sort of are in control of it in a way that you can count on it. I mean, that's sort of how I understand it with my music career and singing careers. My voice was really interesting in my teens and 20s and did a lot of remarkable things, but also I had very little control of it. I would lose my voice a lot. I couldn't hit certain high notes. This was for whatever reason, maybe from smoking too much, or just from over singing, or just from, I think, also emotional feelings, because the voice, would feel vulnerable. Oftentimes I would lose my voice and things like that. And then over time, I sort of had to climb on top of it and take charge of it rather than it sort of taking charge of me. And that's a very good feeling, because that means that, I could, with more confidence, get up on stage, and if there's 10 shows in a row, or if I'm at a show and I've sort of, my voice is not that great and I've dropped a string on the guitar, is broken, I can still get through the set. In my case as well, though, I think that happened earlier than when I was 40, because I grew up a little. I mean, this happens to lots of people who go through something that's difficult, but I had to grow up pretty quickly when I was 33, when my mother died and my son was born, and he was premature, and I had always been a kid before that. and kind of quite dysfunctional. And sort of almost overnight, but I think maybe over 2 or 3 years, I was really faced with a different reality that forced me to sort of have to grow up in a way. And singing helped me, because I was making my living singing, and it was also helping me to psychologically, it helps to express yourself through singing, and so it helped with a lot of the pain that I was feeling. I had the opportunity to sort of have to take charge of my voice, like I had to take charge of my life. All of a sudden I was a property owner several times over. I had no parent really any longer. I had a deep sense of feeling of loss that I hadn't had. I had a difficult marriage already. I had a child who had some special needs, and I had a career that was very active. So it made me have to sort of give up a lot of the behavior that I had in my 20s of being a little bit of a self-sabotager, especially with drugs and alcohol, and have to sort of whip myself into shape.
You had kind of until that point, well, until your former marriage, really, hope you don't mind me saying this, pretty bad taste in men.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Was there a parallel between some of your relationships and your parents' marriage, do you think?
I think that, my parents' relationship was very toxic, I guess, if that's sort of that makes me think of Britney Spears, but, they drank a lot and cheated on each other and tried to sort of outdo each other and try to hurt each other, But luckily it only lasted for 5 or so years, so that's good. I think it was passionate. I think that their exquisite talent, each having this very specific way of being, and also their incredible freedom, egomania, and also and I think they were both incredibly sexy and sexual and overt with it. I think that really made me feel weird. and I didn't know that. I think it was really overwhelming. And I think also because I had to witness a certain amount of it, and it was kind of extreme. And I feel bad saying this because I think that everybody should be able to express their madness and their sexuality and their brilliance, without having to hide it. But I think that I was really kind of aware of it, so that by the time I started to, by the time I reached puberty and was starting to, I didn't feel as attractive as my parents, and I think that in terms of having bad taste in men, I think that there was something about me and this insecurity that I had about my looks and the way that I was that made it that the men that I was with were people that themselves had some confusion about relationships and women. And I don't know if they have abandonment issues or whatever, but there does seem to be this pattern of some of the men that I was with that they were secretive and then went on to have very kind of odd and disturbing relationships with women, whether it's prostitutes or, just... So there's something there. Mm. I did have good taste in men, and then I liked some really great men. They just didn't like me back. so in the same way, they were my friends, but they didn't want to be my boyfriend or whatever. And also, I liked men that were, unattainable and difficult. But yeah, I think also men that had a kind of a twisted thing with women.
In the book, it's really noticeable. You give yourself such a hard time about your looks. Mm. And you kind of use the word handsome a lot pejoratively.
Yeah.
And your delightful brother saying he's never seen anyone who's so beautiful and so ugly at the same time. It's like, thanks so much, brother. Well, that's what brothers are for, isn't it? To be like that. But
yeah, when he said that, it unfortunately, it rang true because I think it spoke to my own conflict about myself of, having this really strong belief in myself and in every way, including the way that I look, and then this deep, deep feeling of worthlessness.
Has that changed any as you've got older?
Well, it's sad to say, not sad to say, but at 39, I, started my divorce proceedings. And although it was the hardest and scariest time ever. It was very, very bad. And it was, lawyers, and it was really fucked up. I was better looking than I had ever been, or at least that's what people would say. I was better looking than when I was in my 20s. I was thinner. My face looked a certain way, or my hair or whatever, that seemed to be more, noticeable. But also, because I was all of a sudden available, I found out that, that for a long time men had been interested in me, but they were good men, and they didn't do anything because I was married, and I didn't really know that, and I was really happy to find that out. And I think that really gave me a lot of confidence, even though this is not a good thing. I was so upset and so freaked out about not seeing the kids and the anxiety. I lost weight, and I was thin for the first time, and clothes looked really good on me, and I was traipsing around, my face got a little thinner or whatever. And there was this window where everyone was sort of, really telling me I was on fire, and men were coming up to me, and it's something that had never, ever, ever happened to me ever in my life. And I'd always wanted it. And it was really amazing. I was like, shit, this is incredible, and I met somebody 2 years after I was separated, and we fell madly in love, and still are. And I had this most incredible relationship with the man that one I had never had, that was honest and good, and also very, very sexual in a way that I had never felt comfortable, so it was really, really incredible, really incredible. And this was 42, 43. And then I thought, hey, here's this guy that I really like, and we love each other, and we're having sex all the time. And maybe I would like to have a baby with him. And, obviously I had to think about that because, I have 2 kids, but my 2 boys really love Nico, my partner, and there seemed to be a lot of trust there and a lot of, love overall. So I thought, and then we started trying naturally, and it didn't work. We tried for 2+ years, and it didn't work. I was 43, 44 years old, he's in his 50s, the chances are next to nil, and trust me, I spent a lot of time looking it up. And so that was, understandable. It wasn't tragic. He has 2 children from a previous marriage that are now in their 20s. I have 2 kids. It's okay. We're okay. Whatever. You just get disappointed every time your period comes. And you're like, well, that's too bad. But it was okay. But I definitely, my mind played tricks on me. I took a lot of pregnancy tests thinking I was pregnant when I wasn't. And then I would say that just in the last year, once it's sort of accepting that, now I'm 46, accepted that, I feel that some of the confidence and the feelings that I had in my early 40s, right, of feeling like I'm look better than ever, that's fading. And it scares me because it felt so good at that moment, to be free of a difficult marriage, looking better supposedly than ever, meeting somebody, and now, that sort of the honeymoon of that is fading, and I guess in recent, months and maybe last year, I'm feeling a little more, in my profession, people get work or don't get work, on their faces and things like that. So you think about that. But I'm a folk musician, so I can't. It wouldn't make any sense,
This episode of The Shift is sponsored by Shopify. I can clearly remember starting The Shift. It's such a leap, isn't it? Going out there on your own, doing a new thing. I mean, what if it doesn't work? What if nobody listens? What if all the tech comes crashing down around me? Now, over 5 years and over 250 episodes later, I know different, of course. Starting The Shift was the best thing I ever did. And it helps to have a partner like Shopify on your side to help. For a start, they'll help you get the word out, like you have a whole marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. Shopify's your commerce expert, with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to shipping, returns, everything. And if you get stuck, their award-winning 24/7 customer support is always around to advise. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your £1 a month trial today at shopify.co.uk/shift. Go to shopify.co.uk/shift. That's shopify.co.uk/shift. Do you feel that pressure then to have work and all of that?
I don't like the way a lot of work looks, like in terms of lip injections and filler and Botox. I find that really doesn't look great. And I'm sorry to say that too. But, and you know what, sometimes maybe people get that done and I don't know, and that they're doing a great job. But when you can really see it, I think a really good facelift probably would be the best thing to do. Yeah. Some people, that it really seems to be, when you can have it done well, it seems like a good thing but I think it makes sense for actors and for people who wear makeup every day and for people who are really on their appearance, and you sort of set it correctly, with what you're wearing and your eyewear and your nails. And I think it can be really quite incredible and totally understandable. I think especially if you're an actress and an actor, I think for me, it's, considering that I spend most of my time in like wool sweaters with moth holes and, around a dirty kitchen table, I don't know if it really makes sense, but I think about it. But then the main thing that I think about is, that what would it do if it changed my face, and what would that be like to look at myself that way? And I don't think I could really handle it.
I think that's what stops me too. I'd like to pretend it was some kind of moral high ground, but really there are things I don't like, but I wouldn't want to not look like me ultimately, I think.
Yeah.
And like you say, sometimes people have really good work and you don't know, so it's great. But other times there are people who have a lot of work or bad work and you're like, oh my God, you can never go back from that.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's all sorts of incredible things that I could be doing in a non-obvious way. I'm just not that organized. Either.
No, it's funny though, because I remember it really struck me so much when I was reading the book before we talked last time. You wrote about your mum in her 40s and 50s and how she was gorgeous and thriving. And it's so funny because from outside, sitting here, I've been looking at you for 45 minutes nearly. That seems to me to apply to you.
Well, good. Well, thank you. How much money do I owe you? I believe that, and I know that that's true. I really do know that that's true, and I see that in all of my girlfriends as well. That they are really look and are amazing and are doing great, and but it's just this battle that we have with ourselves that is obviously caused by the fact that we're constantly exposed to things that are completely unrealistic and not real, and that's really what it is, and I don't think that these issues existed before. I want to say magazines made it worse because everyone saw magazines, and I'm sure that there were versions of that from thousands of years before that maybe didn't afflict everybody, but this obsession with a need for beauty. But the beauty industry, is causing these feelings. And, it's not my case, but I'm sure that there, women feel abandoned by, men when their husbands leave for younger women, or when they stop being able to have children and they feel worthless. There's all of these structures that make us feel less important as our eggs diminish and we become less desirable. But that hasn't been my experience, in the sense that, as I said, I became, to me, what seemed to be more desirable to men, and a man in particular now, as I got older. Hopefully, but that's, I think, also about choosing and finding someone who isn't fucked up, and someone who doesn't have a weird concept of what, a weird relationship with women. That's a sort of simple way of putting it. But
yeah, I don't know. You can't possibly generalize, but I do think that there's an element of that comes with being able to identify that, and not like constantly chasing the bad boy. And I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about everyone. I think that does come with being a bit older, maybe. I don't know.
Well, to me, it felt like, I think it comes with being older. At the time, to me, it felt like a lesson given to me by God. And I'm not saying, I'm not a religious person. I don't really believe necessarily in God or anything like that. But I felt that I was so upset. And I'd been what I felt, very mistreated by my ex-husband for different reasons. I probably exaggerated them in my mind, no doubt as well. And, I had so many bad feelings about my ex-husband, lots of negative thoughts that the therapist, I saw a psychiatrist for a while, said was completely normal because I was afraid. I was like, is it normal to think like this? And the therapist said, absolutely. Of course it is. It's, you're human and it's not abnormal. I was afraid that I had these dark feelings of revenge, of wanting to, wishing he would just go away kind of thing. All of these strange feelings that are really painful to have in your heart and in your mind. It's really painful to carry that around, and it really hurts, So instead of Brad being hurt or hit by a bus or whatever it was that I was hoping, Nico, this other person, came along and was like, okay, instead of hate, fighting bad with bad, I have the possibility of fighting bad with love. And that's what it felt like. And so I felt like choosing a good thing. But it did arrive, and it felt like somehow a gift. But maybe it was because I was finally open to that and free to receive it.
Being in a pretty good place at the minute, how is that making you feel about 50?
It's making me feel very good about it. I think that, because of the not being able to get pregnant thing and, sort of coming out of the honeymoon period of this relationship and getting more into sort of the reality of it and seeing my age on my face, I think this is a little bit of a difficult time, but I think that I'm going to get used to it. And that 50, by the time I feel like I'm going to sort of really be over it in many ways. But I don't know, but I think that this is a kind of a grappling, like a thing. And I feel very excited almost about, being 50 because I don't know. I'm not worried about it. For me, the worry of being any age really also just relates to work. What am I going to be able to, how am I going to be able to create music, keep going in a way that's going to support my family because I'm the sole breadwinner essentially. And how am I going to be able to work and also see the kids before they really leave for good, because, there's only, 5-10 more years before they're out of the house. Do I want to spend that on the road all the time? Or do I want to make sure to, just enjoy this time that I have with them before they leave? And also to help them, make good decisions and get through school and, and get through some things that I think are going to be really difficult, some emotional things that I think are going to be difficult that I already sort of see coming up. And of course, there'll be the surprises that I know nothing about. That's my, how am I going to be able to do it all, basically? Sort of going back to where we started about how does one have a music career and have kids, be on the road and have kids. And I think that that's going to continue to be a conflict because my work requires travel and it requires a certain amount of selfishness, a certain amount of honesty. That's a little bit, dangerous in a way. But I think that fundamentally, I'm convinced is a good message for the kids, my kids. I think it's really important for my two boys in particular to see their mother up on stage speaking, singing, openly, being exposed emotionally and being able to command a room and then get paid to do it, possibly less than her male counterparts. And then, still be present for them and be able to bring something to the bake sale or whatever it is that, makes them feel some normalcy from her, So, that's that's going to be the goal. But I think, from what I understand, is that, your 40s and your 50s are your busiest time ever in your life in terms of, earning years for people like us, who live in the structured society. So this is a very, very, very important time, and one that I don't want to spend feeling bad about my age and bad about myself.
And that's total waste of energy.
Yeah.
How is it raising boys? Do you think there are specific issues?
Well, in my case, everybody's situation is different. My situation is a little loaded because, I'm in conflict with their dad, and their dad is very powerful, and he has a very strong power over them because, they see themselves in him as a man, so they're connected in that way. He's the example, right, that they're following. I feel, I feel sorry for myself. I feel less equipped. I feel like I'm on the outside of a club that I can't get into. And that is silly because there's something I can do about that. And so that I had to get over. And, also people always say to me, oh, don't worry, Martha, boys love their mamas, they'll always come back to their mama. They'll always come back to their mama and all that stuff. But I want to be prepared if they won't, because they're going to make a decision soon-ish. They'll be able to make that decision. They might want to choose the house where, they don't have to do their homework as much, and there's pizza and there's video games and it's messy. I feel like I have to brace myself to accept that and to let it go. That expression has been stolen by Disney, but or Pixar, or whatever. I just came home 2 days ago, and I was really, really happy for their affection from the boys to moms, and now they're a little bit older. So I don't, we don't take baths together anymore like that because one of them has hit puberty and the other one is close behind. So it's a different type of affection. And I do feel like I really missed it and I really need it. But I also really understand that I need to help them to be equipped to do things without me. And that's the best thing that I can give them. And the best thing that I can also give them, or that Nico and I can give them, is that they could see a positive relationship between two adults. That's what we have to show them, so that they have that example, because they have the other example between their two parents that don't get along and divorce, and they still talk about it and they're still really affected by it. So I'm trying to make sure that they know that there's other ways of being with your partner, and that, of respecting and kindness. And that's the message that I think we need to give them. I need to give them. And the fact that they are boys, my youngest son really loves hip hop music because he's really into hip hop culture and Black culture. He loves basketball. He wants to be a basketball player. And I let him listen to hip hop music. I don't really care about swear words or anything like that. I just my whole thing is look, if the whole thing is about bitches and bitch this and bitch that, and it's about, shooting people up and it's anti-women, I don't want, that's what I don't want to see, and the same thing for my eldest son, who's now, talking about girls and talking about them in a way that's, she's not pretty, or she's sexy, or she's not sexy, or she's got to do this, or she, that's just always the big red lights. I'm constantly trying to remind them that girls can do everything that boys can do, and you can't treat them that way. And it's gotten better, but he seems to really understand. My eldest son had this thing 2 years ago, and he was obsessed with the fact that, if you say something bad about a girl, that it's misogynistic, but if you say something bad about a boy, that there isn't really an equivalent, and I was like, well, no, there isn't an equivalent, because girls and women, have been repressed and put down for years. They are the under society. So no, there was no, and that really disturbed him and it made him angry. But I think that he's really coming to understand also why that is, and I think that he's getting it, and he's becoming more sensitive to girls and being more careful, which is good. So it's just with the boys, I think it's just about being careful to make sure that they know not to abuse people with their power, because also my boys are big. They're big guys. Don't hurt people. Don't force anybody into doing something they don't want to do. Make sure that you're not being forced into doing something that you don't want to do.
I've been trying not to be distracted by, is that a kangaroo over your shoulder?
Yes. There's a lot of arbitrary things in here.
It's a really interesting room. So often it's like mine, you get just a door.
my giant vagina painting. Look at that.
Oh, brilliant.
This is an artist who's pretty well known. Her name is Joan Snyder, and it's big. It's like 5 by 10 feet, and that's obviously a big vagina in the middle of it. And it's lyrics from my mother's song, Tell My Sister, which is about a miscarriage. And when I saw the painting, I thought, oh, this is such an incredible painting. And it was painted by her when she was listening to me singing the song. And, it has her mother, all of these sort of it's a very feminist painting, but I really wanted it. So over 5+ years, I did a payment plan, and she was able to sell it to me for a little bit less. Like, we didn't go through the gallery. So it was a really big deal for me to finally be able to hang it in my house.
Oh, it feels like it had your name on, literally.
Yeah, it says Martha Wainwright there. So yeah. So I had to have it, and yeah.
Is your place, did it used to be your mum's?
Yeah. My mom, at around my age, 47, around this time, she bought this building. This has 3 apartments in it. It's like a triplex. And she put everything she had it gutted and renovated. But of course, it went like way over budget. It was crazy. And she went completely into debt. And really, I found out later, was really at the edge of literally throwing herself out the window. It was very stressful. And, every cent, every penny, plus some. And then briefly, Rufus lived upstairs and I lived downstairs, and she lived on the middle floor. And this was like kind of her dream come true. And then he went to Los Angeles, and then I soon after went to New York. But we always had our own apartments here, and each one had a grand piano on it. And it was like really this amazing place. And then when she died 13 years ago, I inherited it, and I moved back to live in it about 9 years ago. So as I've now been here almost 10 years, there are fewer and fewer pictures of her, less and less of her clothes. It was at first a little bit of a museum to her, and it was a little bit overwhelming. But slowly I've been able to sort of move stuff out and into archive or into storage spaces, or just throwing stuff out to, make space for me and my kids, and my kids will be able to have their own apartments, and which is good because, I could still make sure that they are, washing. Yeah. So it's very meaningful because they never got to meet their grandmother. But, this was a gift that she gave us, and that she literally, it almost killed her, and she put everything into it. And then, of course, 25 whatever years later, it's worth a lot of money. And, it was an incredible thing to inherit. And it was completely the right thing to do, and it was really amazing.
You talk in the book a lot about, well, not a lot, but you talk about maybe not belonging or feeling like an outsider and not necessarily knowing what home is. Does this house feel like home now? This house feels like home, definitely. And I think that it's really important to make it feel like home, because I've never, I think that the kids have 2 homes between here and their dad's. And there is a part of me that would like to move back to New York. And I think about it. I think about how could we get back there, because it would be good for work, because, things like that. But I think for the time, I think it's for now, it really needs to be home, mainly for the kids and maybe for myself. Right, I'm going to ask you the questions I always ask at the end. Okay. What's your emotional age? Wow, what a great question. Well, today I feel like it's a great day. I'm very happy today. I'm very happy with where I am. I'm happy to be home. I'm happy to see the kids. I'm happy to have made some money on the road. I'm happy to be here. So I feel very happy in the age that I am. So I would have to say 46. Give us a book recommendation. So it can just be something you've always loved, or it can be something new. There's a great Canadian female writer named Heather O'Neill that I remember when I started out doing shows, and she was a poetess. We've been sort of paralleling each other for years. And she writes books that are set in Montreal, but generally set in the past. And she's incredibly good and very descriptive. And one of her last books is called When We Lost Our Heads. And it's a really great book. Oh, I have to check her out. What advice would you give younger women?
Don't listen to advice? No.
Yeah. That's
Listen to your gut.
Did you?
Not always, no, but I try to.
Who's an older woman who inspires you?
My Aunt Janie right now, that's Kate and Anna's sister. She's older. She's sick. She's in the hospital, but she's battling cancer, but she's really has a very strong will to live. And she is rock solid and a powerhouse. And I'm very much in awe of how she's dealing with her illness. I mean, perhaps she's too stoic in a way, but she's, living life to its fullest and, doing her treatments, and they're working, although they make her really sick. She's then able to, she has times when she can do things, and she's using that time really in a great way. And she doesn't seem to have any regrets. It's very cool that she's pushing this hard to stay on this earth and doing it. It's very graceful in a way.
What's your superpower?
I think my superpower is to be a lot of things and to be able to do a lot of different types of things, whether that's, be it on stage working, but also be good at, I like to cook. So I like to cook a lot for the kids, of being both their mother, but also their friend, of being a good friend to people as well, of being in a lot of different places and doing a lot of different types of things in life.
And last one is, how many fucks do you give?
How much do I care? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Sorry. I think, the way that I see it, I care a lot, I guess. So a lot, a lot.
That is what I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love talking to you again. It's so
Good.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for listening. You can hear a new episode of The Shift each Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please do rate, review and follow, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like to support The Shift further, please consider becoming a member of our community. Find out more at study.media/The Shift.